Okay, 2.3 is identifying locations. It's a really simple um, sort of mini lesson on how to set things up in space. And they use, in the textbook, tic-tac-toe, which is one of the more boring games once you've learned it. I remember being a little kid, really liking it, and then going, oh, like, as if there's no real game in here. So anyway, oops, burp, bump. So it's identifying locations in this vertical plane. And as I think I said in one of the past ones, that we use both a horizontal plane and a vertical plane when describing things and placing things. So it's good to practice with both of them. The only game more boring than not Monopoly. So anyway, you're allowed to be wrong. What can I say? So we're going to look at how people set things up. It's really simple, right? So you're going to draw, boom, boom, boom. Now you've got the grid. So we set it up in vertical space. And then how do we know what square we're referring to? Well, we start with a reference point, and it's usually, if you're left-handed, it will be the upper left. If you're right-handed, it'll be upper right. Well, actually, yeah. Most of the left-handed people I know tend to do it this side and across and then down. So for me, being right-handed, I will use my left hand, which is the one it's my support hand, right? It's my passive hand. It does a lot less of the heavy lifting. So I will place the reference point, kind of like we did with circle, remember? That we give that reference point, and if we're setting up that there's a triangle and right above it is going to be something. So we use this as the reference point, boo, and then boom, 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 boom. Right? So if we've got the grid right in front of us, and you want to be consistent, if you do a tiny little grid, then it's small. If you do a large grid, and since we're using video, if you're ever doing this, make sure you're watching your video. As much as we hate watching ourselves, make sure that everything you're doing is in the frame of the video, right? And it takes a lot of getting used to. I still am not quite good at it with the camera. So there are 3 games that are listed in here, or shown on the DVD, if you have that. The first one is game number 1. So as you go through, just watch the video, and they'll take turns going back and forth. So obviously, that's where he put the first one. Right? Placed it, went for the corner, then went 1, 2, X. Right. So it's pretty simple. It's a really easy concept. If we were doing it in the classroom, it takes like 5 minutes to get the idea, and then a little bit longer to start figuring out that the challenge is what you're looking at and what I'm looking at, because we're looking at each other, are flips, are mirror images. What's on my right is on your left. Easiest way to think about that is if I'm holding up a map of the United States, for me, Maine is up here and Florida is down here. For you, it's the exact opposite. Maine is up here, right? There's a little, Canada is all up here. So Maine and Florida, and California is over here, right? And Washington is up here. So getting used to that. When we sign, we don't sign for the other person. We sign what we see. So I would always say Florida's right down here. Florida's that little dangly bit right here, and Maine is up here. So we call it signer's perspective. You're always going to go from whoever's signing. So if you're telling a story to me and you turn right, it's going to go that way. Where if I'm telling the story and I turn right, I'm going to go this way. So it's the same thing if we're plotting something out in space. If I told you that Cleveland is here and Columbus is here, Cleveland's here, Columbus is here, and Cincinnati's down here. Can't see. Okay, boom, boom, boom. I would lay it out that way. You might reverse. Vertically, it's still the same, but which is further east, which is further west, would flip. And I would follow you as the audience. So hopefully that makes sense. Now with this Sudoku, So, because we've got 3 lines across. So we could do it's a really easy thing to do. We already do it. If it helps to put the piece of paper up, it could be a piece of paper on the table in front of you or on your screen if you want to put it on the screen and actually touch the screen. Whatever helps. It's a good thing to practice with someone else if you're chatting with someone. But they get boring, I must admit. So unless you're working with someone on that and you enjoy those kind of puzzles, it could be boring. Another great one to do is playing Battleship. It's a little bit more complicated because you've got 10. So you could go. We normally do, letters, numbers anyways. B4, you sunk my battleship, that kind of thing. So you could do the same thing of just add those other steps of going down for the letter, going across for the number. And then you could repeat, B4. So those are good ways of doing it if you're doing a video chat. This is also something that once someone learns the numbers and letters, that you could do with someone who's a non-signer, who's not taking this class. So if you happen to have younger siblings or someone else who's willing to play the game, learn the code, you can teach them that, and this is a good way of practicing. So now that we're playing a couple of games, some things that will be helpful are some vocab that have to do with games. So start. Imagine you've got a key and you put it in the ignition and twist it forward. Start. Start, or go ahead. Head for head. I should say heads and tails. It's an English thing. Tails, the book says to fingerspell tails, T-A-L-E-S, T-A-I-L-S. I've also seen tails as if this is your tail coming from behind, tail. Tail, T-A-I-L. I'm doing it just really fast, T-A-I-L. It's very little change, T-A-I-L. Tail. Or tail. This may have just been the area that I lived in that we would do tails as we were playing games. Win. Imagine, remember, pick up a dandelion and pop the head off, right? So you're doing that same thing, win. So grab the flower, I have the dandelion. Win. Win. Lose is fall on your face. So here's you, fall. And here's the ground, fall on your face. Lost. Equal, fair, equal, both sides equal. Tie, and which. This will come up a lot. Where, which, where. Where do you want to go? Which square? Okay. Or which boat? Boat. It's not in the vocab yet, but I'll throw it in for Battleship. And then I put all the vids in it. There really isn't that much, as I say, in this little chapter. Now we start to get more vocab, even though the chapters don't get all that much longer for most of them. So that's 2.3. Tic-tac-toe, a little bit of vertical stuff. There's really not that much in this one.